Welcome to Children's Ministry Events Part 2. In this session, we're going to talk about planning events. So let's say that you're looking at your children's ministry strategy and you're saying, okay, this is where we're going. This is what we're doing on Sunday mornings. This is our purpose. This is our plan. Now we're looking at how events are going to play into that, how they're going to create more momentum toward the overall flow of what you're trying to accomplish, to reach and teach children and families with the good news of Jesus Christ. And so let's say you take a look at the event, and so you're thinking, what's going to come along? What's going to be an outside to help this, to help me accomplish this? And so the first thing is come up with the event idea. And now here's some information once that idea develops, because every event has a life of its own. Begins with an idea, moves into details, and usually there's the honeymoon phase where you're in love with the event, and usually during that, ideas just pour out. And then you come to the detail and the recruiting volunteers and making connections and making sure everything is where it needs to be and prepared, and then the implementation of the event, and then the day of the event, and then there's the follow-up after the event, and the celebration and the evaluation. So every event really has its own life cycle. So instead of starting with dreaming the event, I want to really start at the point where you're ready to put some things on paper. So the first thing is, what are you going to call the event? What's going to be your event name? What's your event date? How is this going to work with your church calendar? Are there other conflicts? Is this the best time to have it? Could there be a better time? Now, when I first went into ministry, one of the mistakes that I made is I would have an event idea and we were quick to execute it. And almost after every event we did in our evaluation, we realized we jumped too fast to do it. We could have done it better if we would have taken more running room. So remember, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon, that the best events will be planned out with distance. You'll plan them out with long running room. We do a 5th grade mission trip in the summer, and we start working on that mission trip in October. And by December, January, we want to have it lined up where we're going. In February, we're telling our parents about it. In March, we get to start training for it. And so you see, there are a lot of things that lead up to events. Vacation Bible School. It's a big event. That's a big, major event. Well, you can't wait till a month before to start planning it. Not if you really want it to be everything that it can be. So what you want to do is you want to approach it months out. I start planning the next year's Vacation Bible School actually during the Vacation Bible School that I'm doing. And so this year, we finished Vacation Bible School about 6 weeks ago. And during every event, I have what I call my brain. And it's a booklet, and I bind it together, comb bind it, and it's simply a booklet that has all the information for that event. Has the schedule, who's working where, who's in charge of what. You know, if there's other people involved outside our church, has their phone numbers, contact information, details, teaching schedules. I mean, the large session outlines, the curriculum, everything that needs to be done, my to-do list, to-buy list, everything's inside my brain. Now, if I lose my brain, usually I have a second brain somewhere else. Actually, my wife usually has my other brain, which makes sense. That's kind of how life works anyway. So this is my brain. Well, inside my brain, that booklet that I carry during an event, a major event, I have a place where I start making notes for the next year. And so when I see something and I go, it would have been so much better if we would have thought of this, I write it down. It's already. And so by the end of that event, I'm ready to sit down and make a list of things that I want to change or tweak or try or get rid of the next year. And so use running room. And then if you're planning a Vacation Bible School, start recruiting months out. We send a card the very, very end of December that says, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. By the way, Vacation Bible School is this many weeks away. It's going to be this date. It's our first contact with our volunteers from the year before to let them know when Vacation Bible School is, to encourage them to mark their calendar, and to let them know we're going to be contacting you in the next 6 or 8 weeks. Be thinking about where and how you would like to serve. And with our families, we send them information. Next year's Bible School, we send it to them in November. And at the end of the year, at the end of December, we send our families a DVD, and it has video highlights from a bunch of the different events we did through the year. And then we enclose the schedule. These are our events coming up next year. And you see, things like that, when you work months out instead of weeks out or days out, it gives you so much more running room to be ready, to be available to tweak things, to get other people's input, to really create the momentum toward it that needs to be created. And so work out from a distance. So set the event date. What's your purpose? What are you trying to accomplish? Keep that in mind. That has to be the forefront. Because if you're going to add anything into your event, if it doesn't mesh with your purpose, it probably doesn't need to be there. Like if your purpose is to reach and teach people and you want, let's say your purpose is evangelism. You want people to hear the gospel, but you're bringing in, say, an illusionist to share with your kids, but this guy doesn't share the gospel. Well, okay, that's not the best fit because he's going to be entertaining, but your purpose isn't to entertain. Your purpose is you want your kids to hear the gospel in a clear way. And so keep your purpose, your goals in mind. Okay, who's your target audience? For camp, it might be 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. For a day camp, it might be 1st and 2nd graders. For a kindergarten welcome day, it's going to be kindergarten. For Bible school, it's probably going to be all ages. And so who's your target? How many do you expect to be there? Because that's going to affect how much food you're going to buy. If you're doing a giveaway, how many things you're going to need to get to give away if you want every kid to have one, how many name tags you're going to need, how fast you're going to do check-in, how you're going to do the check-in. What time is the event going to start? What time is the event going to end? What time are you going to start setting up? What time are you going to clean up and be totally through? The setup time, sometimes that might be days before. Vacation Bible School. A lot of times I will go to our staff and our worship leader and say, hey, to really do what we're going to want to do on stage, we're going to need to set up the week before. And it creates momentum when people show up on Sunday morning and right there, the stage is not the way it normally is. The platform looks totally different because this week is Vacation Bible School and you're able to give your senior adults a prayer guide or all your adults a prayer guide. Let them prayer walk the church, So they walk through all the different areas and they're able to read, this is what's going to happen in this area. In this area, this is where our 2nd graders are going to hear the story of such and such. And in this area, when we give an invitation on Wednesday or Thursday, in this area, this is where they're going to talk to people. This is the room where probably most people during Bible school are going to get saved. Pray for and list the things you want them to pray for. And so you can involve everybody. The whole church can be involved in some events without it really eating up what you would consider to be church time by simply providing extra tools, information, and communication. Then beside the basic event information, that's what we've been talking about. Let's move now to promotional information. Now, you can't do promotion until first you've planned all your event information. And what you don't want to do is plan your event information, then give promotion information, and then have to change your date or your time. Once it's out, it needs to stay with what's out. Otherwise, you're going to have confusion. So promotional information is, when do you want to begin promoting this to the community? How are you going to promote it to the community? And in our outreach session, we'll talk more about different tools to use with media and newspaper and some other ways to use there. But right now, let's just stick to planning the event. When do you want to begin promoting it to the community? How are you going to promote it to the community? If people have to pay for this, what are you going to charge them? How are you going to communicate that? How do they pay? Can they pay by cash, check, credit card? Can they pay online? Do they have to come by the church? Now, not all of this is going to end up on an event flyer. These are your planning details. Do you have an early registration deadline? Do they get something for registering early? Like, does it cost less? Do they get a free t-shirt or something you're giving away? Does it cost more if they have late registration? Is there a registration cutoff point? Is there a point if you're doing it online where that online won't be available and that'll have to be changed to say no longer online registration is closed. Please register by calling such and such, or Sunday morning at the front of the church. What are you going to be your ways of promoting this. And just some ways, I mentioned a second ago, but you've got word of mouth, you've got newspaper, bulletin, poster, mail, email, you've got social media, you've got Facebook, you've got Twitter, you've got a variety of different ways. And again, we'll go over those more when we talk about outreach. Do you need tables set up anywhere? What tables do you need? What setups do you need? Do things need to be moved? Is certain equipment needed? Now, here's a big one. What's your promotional description? In other words, describe the event the way that you would invite someone to attend it. So if you were to put a blurb in the newspaper or on Facebook, and the purpose of that was for somebody to look at it and go, hey, I don't go to that church, but wow, that sure does sound great. I think I would like to do that. How would you describe this event? Here's a promotional description we used once. It says simply, looking for some summer fun? Take everything you love about church, drop in a bit of slime time, add about a gallon of Dr. Pepper to it, and you've got this summer's Wednesday evening program that will encourage your kids to become fully devoted followers of Christ. This fast-paced Nickelodeon-style, team-oriented evening will challenge them to learn the books of the Bible, to know the Ten Commandments, to be like Jesus, and to tell their friends about Him. So much fun, so little time, your kids won't want to miss this. This event begins on such and such. And so you also want to tune your promotional description to your target audience. Obviously, that was written to families that are attending church, encouraging the parents to bring their kids on Wednesday night. If you were writing to, say, a promotional description and your target audience are unchurched people, well, you probably wouldn't push the discipleship as hard as much as some of the tools or the hooks that might draw an unchurched person more. So you've got your promotional description, and then you want to break it down. What would your Twitter description be? In other words, describe your event in 140 characters or less. I mean, this is just the brief, bare bones, the one-line description of this is what we're doing and why. And then beyond the promotional information, let's move to the programming information. Now, the program information, this involves what's going to actually happen in sharing during the event. Are you going to use a speaker? Are you going to have people do music? Who are they? What's their phone number? What's their email? Are you going to have a different kind of special guest? Are you going to have a testimony or someone share a story? Who is doing the main speaking? Is somebody operating as the facilitator around this? What's the event schedule? What's the pattern? What are the decorations that are needed? What's your check-in process? What's your check-out process? What's the order of service? Is there a hospitality area? Like if you're using leaders, like during Vacation Bible School, are you going to have a hospitality room? Or if you're doing a conference, are you going to have an area? And maybe it's for everybody at the conference. Maybe it's just for the leaders with food, drinks, snack. Are you giving any resources away? Are there any giveaways? And so those are some examples of programming information. Then you have your setup information. The setup is basically what you're going to need. Again, tables, chairs, which rooms, what part of the church, getting permission to use those things. Are there other additional resources you need? Do you need computer, a laptop? Do you need childcare? Do you need video? Are there certain lighting features that you need? Certain sound system? Are you going to use what kind of microphone? Are you going to use transportation? Are there vehicles that are needed? If your church has a bus or a van, do you need to reserve those, request those? Are you using personal transportation? If so, who's driving? Even church vehicles, who's driving? You want to make sure they're on your church insurance. And so there's a lot of questions there as far as what it actually takes to set up, to do the event. Location, where's it going to be in the church? Where's it going to be out of the church? Is it a person's home? Then you've got your, we call this our ministry team information. These are teams that already exist inside our church. And a lot of times it's easier to use an existing team than it is to put a team together. So for example, at our fall festival, our men's ministry will help with the cleanup. Why? Because it's easier for us to go to our men and say, can you help us with the cleanup? Rather than to go and to recruit all of these different men and then to gather them and create our own cleanup crew. So we just go to the leader of our men's ministry and say, hey, we're doing Fall Festival. This is the event. This is when it's going to end. This is our cleanup. This is what's going to need to be done. Could the men's ministry oversee this? Okay, I'm giving this to you. Now, anytime you delegate something to a team leader in an event, you need to be very careful not just to leave it there. Don't just give something away. You've got to come back and inspect it. Come back and give them a phone call. Hey, a few weeks before, a few months before, hey, have you talked to the men about doing the cleanup? A few weeks before, hey, this is what we're going to have. We're going to have trash bags ready for you. We're going to have this, this, this. And so sometimes it's bringing them additional information. And bringing them extra information also helps to have that connection again, so that they're reminded, oh, I need to be contacting them. I need to be holding this in front of them. So when you give something away, always go back to have conversations again and to inspect it. Don't ever delegate something to someone and then expect to show up in it to be done. Always expect that you need to follow up to make sure that it's done. Now, that doesn't mean that you're micromanaging them. What that means is you're simply making that all the bases are covered, that everybody's doing what they've agreed to do. And so your teams may involve a setup team, a decorations team, a teaching team, a plan of salvation or decision room team. And some people may be on more than one team. There may be an overall registration team that oversees everything, or there's almost everything you do at a large event can be done by a team, and most of those teams, depending on the size of your church, you can use existing entities. Whether it's a Sunday school class, at your fall festival, you could see if the Sunday school classes in your church, each one would adopt a game. Now, typically, I would not give them the opportunity to create their own game, because a lot of times you will end up with games that you don't necessarily want. So at least the way I lead, I prefer to develop the games, go to the classes and say, here are a few options. And if they have a better option and they bring me a better option, then that's great. We'll run with it. But if they come and they say, hey, we want to do this, and you look at the game and you're thinking that's really not really that great of a game, it's easier to look at them and say, I'd really rather you stay with these options right here. Rarely do I go and say, hey, this is your class's game. This is just how it is. I like to give people options. I want their buy-in. I want them to be a part of it. Sunday school class, the advantage is those people like being together already, so it's real easy for them to be together leading something. Or would your Sunday school class oversee the candy bag distribution area, or would your class oversee the snacks or the food or the drinks or the desserts? And so there's many things you can give away you don't have to do yourself, but it's the process of becoming a good delegator, which begins by planning in advance, planning ahead, knowing what you need, going to the people early enough and telling them what you need so that later on when you come back it hasn't drastically changed, and then coming back to them, having continual conversations, not bugging them, but having conversations just to make sure that everybody is on task. And so use your volunteers, use your leaders, use teams. Let them run with it, let them dream, let them be creative, but at the same time, you're the leader. Keep it inside the confines of your vision, your purpose, of what you see needs to be accomplished in the overall event to make this work and be most effective in reaching and teaching people with the good news of Jesus Christ, which is the purpose for the event and the purpose for your ministry. All right, beyond using teams, you've got budget information. These are things money-wise that you need to think about. What are the costs? If there's programming, are there leaders? Are you bringing in leaders? Okay, what should you pay them? What's the honorarium? Do you need a hotel? Are you going to pay their gas, their mileage on top of the honorarium? Are you going to take care of their meals while they're there? Are you going to reimburse them for the meals while they traveled to and from you? With food, how much is the food going to cost? I mean, just to provide the food. Are you charging anything to offset the cost, or is this coming out of budget? If it's coming out of budget, where in the budget is this already planned for? Where's it coming out of? At what point are you actually going to spend this money? Is something else. Looking at your budget, because a lot of churches run on the cash that they have. You need to look, because you may need to spread out some of your spending. A lot of times we'll spend for Bible school over a variety of months so that we're not spending everything in June, which is usually not the best giving month. And so these are some things to think about. What are the decorations going to cost? Are you going to decorate the entrance to the church? Are you going to decorate the platform, the stage, the worship center, certain rooms? Is that a person's house? What decorations do you need? Is there a cost for any video, anything you're having created? Creative elements. Are you doing a drama? Are there any supplies that are needed for that? Are you giving out anything? Tracts, bags, candy? Are you giving out church information? Where's that coming from? Who's doing that? How's it being put together? Who's printing it? How's it being distributed? What's the best way to distribute it to make sure it actually gets home? In our fall festival, we stopped giving candy out at every game. And we started bagging the candy, and it was great. It gave some of our senior adults an opportunity to be a part of the fall festival. They stuffed the candy bags, we put in their church information, and we put a gospel tract. And that gospel tract, our goal is, it's not to put candy in the belly of our kids. Our goal is to get that tract inside the house. And so what we realized, when we didn't put these in bags, two things happened. One is we had a lot of trash, because as they would get the candy, they would eat the candy. Wrappers would be put on the floor, things would be dropped, candy would be dropped, candy would be stepped on. Tracts would be given to them individually, but not all the tracts went in the bag. Some went in the trash can, some went on the floor. We'd walk around after picking up tracts, picking up candy, picking up trash. And we finally decided the best way to get tracts into the house is we put the candy in a bag, we put the tract in with the candy, put the church information in with the candy, and we even have little bags we have printed. They're Ziploc bags. So they zip across the top, some of them do, and so they don't even necessarily open easy. Now, we have used ones that have like the handles, and those work great too. But basically, we would tell people, hey, when you're ready, go get a candy bag on your way home. They get the candy bag. Most of them don't start eating the candy at the event. They get the candy bag. A lot of the parents wait till the very last thing. So they're leaving because they don't want to carry it around. So at the end, after playing all the games, they grab the candy bag, they go home. And then most of the time, we've discovered the candy bags go straight to the kitchen. Parents sort through the candy. Things are sorted out. The tract is in the kitchen. Or some parents, because it's coming from the church, they just let the candy go back to the kids' room, and now the tract has made it into the kids' room. And so our goal was simply to get it in the house. But it's been interesting that they end up in the kitchen or the kids' room most of the time, and they're not always immediately thrown away. That sometimes they'll sit there for a day, two, they'll be set over with mail, here or there. So it becomes, there's multiple opportunities. Now, I'm not saying they're always read, because I'm sure they're not. But our goal was to get them in the house and to pray, because we have people pray specifically for those tracts. In fact, even when we stuff the tracts with our senior adults, we pray, God, put these tracts into people's hands, let them see them, plant a seed, let them read them. On the back of the tracts has our church information, a phone number to call. A part of our website, we have the Plan of Salvation, so they can get online and actually watch the Plan of Salvation. It's just a simple video of somebody telling how someone can give their life to Christ. But it's another way that people can see more without actually having to pick up the phone and call, because they're less likely to do that. Creating it the easiest way possible to get the gospel into people's hands. And something else, while we're on the subject of candy bags, is make sure that you always give away individually wrapped candy. And like cookies, individually wrapped cookies. We, at our church, we never give away homemade things. Not that we don't trust that. If homemade things are brought, we give it to our volunteers who are helping stuff our candy bags, or our volunteers who are helping prepare the stage, or it's in the hospitality room for our volunteers. Because what we're giving people that come to our church for the first time, we want to make sure that there's never, and it sounds bad, there's never a hair in the cookie, or there's never something, because if someone cooks it, you don't have control over what's in it. You trust it if you buy it from the store and it's individually wrapped. And so always individually wrapped cookies, individually wrapped candies, things of that sort is all that we use. And if something else is given, like a bag of jelly beans, well, we don't individually wrap those. We find another way to use those for ministry without using them actually during that event to give them away, since they're not individually wrapped. A few other expenses that you might have is gifts and prizes. T-shirts. Are you doing any kind of T-shirts for your event? Volunteer appreciation. Your key team leaders, are you going to give them a gift card? Is there a way that you're going to say, hey, thank you so much? Because that needs to be a part of your budget as well. And so there's some of your budgeting information. And the bottom line is you need to look at overall, we expect this many people to come. This is what the overall event is going to cost. And so to do this event, we either need to have that money in our budget, or we're going to offset it by, like camp. We're going to charge all of our kids this amount of money, and it offsets this much because we're expecting to spend this much, and the rest of that's going to come out of our budget. And so I hope that makes sense. It's kind of hard to talk about budget without actually, me being a visual person, without actually showing you, putting something in your hands and letting you see it. It's something always to talk with your staff and church leaders about as well. Another question is, what support do you need? Do you need childcare? Do you need transportation, technology? We've mentioned a few of these: audio, video, lighting, computer. Do you want photography? At some of our fall festivals, we've had a photographer come, usually someone in our church, take pictures. And there's easy ways you can put them online where people can download them, or print them out right there, which is really the best way, because anytime you go to publish photographs, you want to be very careful. We're always careful anytime anything is posted officially through the church with pictures. And we even, on our information, kids going to camp, and permission slips, because anytime you're going to be taking a child off campus, you've got to have a permission slip, just for the safety of your organization as well as you as an individual. And so on those, we always have permission to video, use photographs in promotional information, etc. And part of that, and it's also a medical release form, but part of that is with pictures. You want to make sure you're never going to post a picture and then a parent's going to be upset, because what if a predator saw that picture? It has their name on their name tag, first and last name. You want to be careful what you do and how you do it to make sure it's going to be good with your parents. But at the same time, you want to be able to put out videos where your parents can see them, or pictures. Take a picture, turn it to a postcard, mail it to your kids. There's lots of ways you can use it, but you've got to talk with your church staff, your leaders, find the best balance for the ministry that you're in and the area that you're in as well. Promotion, what kind of promotion you're going to do? We touched on this. This is a little more detailed as far as print media, newspaper, bulletin, posters, banners, postcards, letters, emails. Is there electronic media, social media, web? Does your church have a website? Are there community websites? Other ways you can get information out. And then sometimes you have miscellaneous expenses as well. And so you need to budget all of that into your costs, what you're expecting your total event to cost. Then at the end, you want to do an evaluation. Your evaluation, hey, did we reach the people we wanted to reach? You know, this was our target audience. Did we connect with them? How many people registered by the deadline? How many people registered after? Is there something we can do better to get more to register earlier? How many registered at the door? What was our total number of people there? How many first-time families did we meet? I mean, there's lots of things you can evaluate number-wise. Budget-wise, were we over? Were we under? Were we right on? What stories can we tell from this? The best way to celebrate an event is to tell a story of how that event, how God used that event to make a difference in a person's life. Was somebody saved? Was a family impacted? Were there certain comments that were made? A lot of times we'll ask leaders, Bible school and other events, to write down an evaluation, and sometimes their comments become one-liners that we can use to actually promote either to volunteers or sometimes the event itself. And also some other questions to ask besides give a specific example of how somebody was affected by your event. Other questions would be, what is the greatest challenge that you faced? How did you overcome it? Is there something you need to leave out next time? Is there something that you need to add in next time that would make it better? Are there certain things that you want to repeat? Again, because they did exactly what they were supposed to do, and it was exactly what you wanted. Now, a lot of the information I've been going over with you, when I started planning events, a lot of times I would look at the event, and I would simply think through all the details. I need this. Yes, we're off-site, so I need transportation. And yes, it's going to cost to rent that facility, so that's going to cost. And a lot of my details came from simply working the event from the inside out. Today, I've been walking with you through actually several pages that our church uses. It was developed by our executive pastor, Chad Balthrop, here at First Baptist Church in Owasso. And it's simply a form to help keep you on track as you plan an event. And a lot of the questions that I've asked and the information I've gone over, yes, that's specific to our church and our ministry needs here, but you can develop something just like it to be a guide so that when you have a volunteer that wants to come along and plan an event or help plan an event, that you have a guideline to say, hey, here's and we, in the children's ministry here, we call things like that a field guide. Here's our field guide for how we plan an event. And so at the very end, the last thing I want to end with is, yes, you've evaluated your event, but you can't forget the follow-up. How do we bridge this event to the next thing? Now, that should happen during the event, but there's a momentum that you can ride after an event. And a part of that is also the follow-up. If people were saved, if people came for the first time, if people showed problems, gave prayer requests, how do we follow up on that? What is the best way? And the best way, honestly, is to have somebody or to have teams in place where you're ready to make visits or phone calls or write postcards, depending on really on what the follow-up is going to need. But you don't want to wait. The best follow-up actually happens during the event. So somebody is saved at camp, and so from camp they call their mom and dad, they tell them they were saved. Now I would do that for parents who go to church. They call mom and dad, hey, I got saved tonight. So mom and dad already know. And kids that are not from church background, they get saved at camp, you're already talking to them about, hey, when you get home, hey, the first conversation I want you to have with your parents is about you getting saved, and that this is what it means. And many times we'll give them a card. We'll stick it in their hand right as they get off the bus. And so they walk up to mom and dad and say, hey, it's a reminder to them, hey, I gave my life to Jesus. And mom, dad, this card, this tells you about that. And on there we put our website so they can go see what we explain to their child, has my cell number so they can call me, directly, not call the church, call me as a person. If they want to talk more, on there it explains that they're not, just because they're saved doesn't mean they're joining our church, but that it's an important decision in anybody's life. If they have questions, let us know. That baptism is an important step of following Jesus afterwards. And usually, if it's an event, we'll say, and this is a date that we're going to baptize anybody that made a decision, during this event. And so there are a few ideas that may help you for follow-up as well. We're coming to the end of this part of events. We've covered basically event priorities, event ideas, planning events, celebrating events, and doing follow-up. Now, we didn't emphasize as strongly as I want to the idea of telling stories. If you want an event to live on, tell the stories. Tell the stories of life change that happened at that event. Let that event live under the shadow of those people's lives. And so, Fall Festival, if a year later somebody joins, but their first contact was Fall Festival, and they're saved and God has fixed their marriage, as you share their story, let them share their story by video, let them share it in person, interview them, but let that story be shared. And hey, we first met y'all at our Fall Festival, and this was the process. This is how God brought us here, and then God changed our lives. And maybe it was a different event that God changed our lives. Anytime there's salvation, life change, use those stories. Use those stories. Those stories are more powerful than listing numbers. Those stories are more powerful than listing how you did with your budget. Those stories are the most powerful thing you can do to create momentum. Share the stories of what God is doing.